Good morning from Doolittle Hall on this beautiful Colorado day. My name is Mark Hilley. I'm a member of the class of 1997, and I have the pleasure of serving as the president of the Air Force Academy Foundation. As fellow Sabre Society donors, we certainly agree that the Air Force Academy is a uniquely special place. And if you participated in our sessions on Tuesday, I suspect you now have a few more reasons to be proud of your support for our institution. The truth is that the Sabre Society is important to absolutely everything we do to support our Academy. Your gifts are used in countless different ways, supporting the top needs identified by the superintendent and the Academy senior staff. Year to year, these needs may shift, as indeed they did amidst the coronavirus pandemic, and the Sabre Society was there to help. Whether this was for special outdoor fitness equipment, for a socially distanced cadet wing, or funding to help our faculty provide new course material this summer, Sabre Society support made a difference this year. And your generosity underwrites many of our efforts here at the Foundation as well. Just last week, I presented a check for $16.8 million to our Superintendent General Clark for the construction of a new Cyber Innovation Center. The Sabre Society makes our efforts to provide this type of support possible. Now just multiply this impact over 25 years, and you get a little bit of a sense of how vital the Sabre Society is to everything we do to support the institution we are committed to serve. So thank you. And now please enjoy today's sessions. I'll see you back here later this afternoon for the final portion of our special event, a celebration and reception. See you soon.
Before our first session this morning, here's a short video highlighting the impact of your gift this past year to the Air Force Academy Fund. Join us for Cadet Summer Research Programs.
Each summer we send roughly between 250 and 300 cadets on cadet summer research opportunities where they'll interact with either other DoD entities, academia, or industry, and they'll have opportunities to work on real-world relevant research problems. This summer, we had an interesting situation where with the COVID pandemic, we weren't allowed to travel. So we actually rebuilt our entire program around a virtual concept of operations where we reached out to various sponsors who had already been lined up and some that hadn't. And we matched cadets to virtual opportunities where they would work with their research mentors via the internet, Teams calls, Zoom calls, in any sort of virtual teleconferencing. They would send research materials in computer code and they would work on it together over a distance of wherever that research partner happened to be. And we were able to grow the program miraculously by 55% this year as opposed to last year. So it was a really cool opportunity for our cadets this summer, even despite the COVID pandemic. And some of the things that you'll see today are some of our cadets that were selected as award winners. So some of our top cadets research, those are some of the cadets that we're going to highlight here in this video.
I worked with the Joint Trauma System out of San Antonio to do research into Role 2 teams. These are austere surgical and resuscitative teams, and we were looking at their training, their staffing, their equipping. We were doing after-action reports and Role 2 readiness reports for them to see how they're preparing for deployments to improve their training, staffing, and equipping to save more lives downrange. CSRP impacts the academy, and that allows cadets the opportunity to go out and do research that impacts the future fight, impacts the fight going on, and impacts the world around them. This also gives the world an opportunity to see what we're doing and how cadets are as undergraduate students. I'd say this is, in my opinion, almost a graduate level institution as far as academics are concerned, and CSRP is a program that I would equate to a graduate level program. It impacts cadet life in that we have the opportunity to go out and have those experiences and then share those experiences with our classmates. So I have the opportunity to talk to other pre-med students and say, hey, I'm doing research that impacts the medical world right now. So as a pre-med student, CSRP has allowed me to put this on my applications, obviously, and make myself a better pre-med candidate. Additionally, it's allowed me to share these experiences with other cadets and encourage them to try hard in their academics and really put in the effort and expand on their knowledge of the world around them.
So I had the opportunity to work with a non-Air Force research group looking into organophosphate toxicity in Air Force maintainers. In the fuel and lubricants, there's this nasty neurotoxin called organophosphates, and there's little to no personal protective gear for the maintainers. And it causes altered mental states such as depression and suicide, and maintainers have the highest rate of suicide in the Air Force. So the research team is looking to prove that correlation and work to improve their safety. My research is more big Air Force operational focus, but I think it's really cool to involve Academy cadets in that process because we are commissioning into that operational Air Force. And if I have the chance to go kind of sciences in the Air Force, this might be something I continue to work on. It's really expanding my horizons and what I want to do, developing me for future research, and just giving people a taste of what it looks like in real life so we make more informed decisions. The research team invited me to, because we're only in the beginnings of the project, invited me to come back next year and the year after and maybe senior year as well if they're still working. So this could be the same project I work on all 4 years and it could be my senior capstone.
I worked with the SAF GCR office with the Pentagon, so that's the General Counsel Office of Resolution. So basically what they're doing is working with contractors a lot, working with young leaders in the Air Force, trying to create conflict resolution platforms pretty much to work through. And so specifically what I did this summer was I helped create a 4-week platform for Air Force August training for this conflict resolution and sensitive topics. And so after I was gone, back when I was at school, they ended up traveling around and doing it virtually, but sort of teaching young leaders in the Air Force, typically non-commissioned officers, this platform that we created. I think just doing research itself, kind of meeting other people, being in a different office is really good for development as a person. How it'll help the academy, specifically we did some sensitive topic training for week 3 of our August training that we developed. And so I was able to sort of do that here at the academy amongst my squadron, and kind of talk about sensitive topics in America, whether it's race or different things like that. How can we address that in the Air Force? How can we address that the right way, create a more impactful, influential place for all people? So that was kind of a way I was able to bring that back here. A lot of the conflict resolution platforms I was able to create with GCR super important for young leaders. A lot of times, like I said, non-commissioned officers, people who are just coming into their leadership positions in the Air Force, and they got to figure out how to figure out conflict resolution, how to figure out problems in their unit, and kind of put it into it, figure out those things on a small basis. And so just going through a step-by-step process, a lot of understanding the root of problems, whether it be personnel problems or culture problems, things like that, things we were addressing in my research, I think will really help units downrange in a lot of ways.
This summer, I was researching the effects of conditional cash transfers on COVID-19 response and susceptibility. So I did this research with Dr. Piazza in the political science department. We were just investigating how conditional cash transfers could decrease mobility in order to decrease susceptibility to COVID and COVID contraction. So it was just a means of seeing if receiving extra money really decreased the need for people to go outside their homes for excess travel and excess, visiting family and stuff. And we found that our research, it showed that the extra money didn't even really help with decreasing mobility, which is quite unfortunate because people like to think that money helps with everything. But unfortunately, in terms of decreasing mobility and alleviating poverty and helping people stay in their homes, it didn't really help much. So CSRP is very impactful to the academy, I think, because it gives you the opportunity to look beyond just the four walls of your cadet life and beyond just what's happening in Colorado Springs or in the US, and you can kind of expand your mind to see how what you're doing here as a cadet can impact the entire world. Or when you become an officer, like your research will help you better understand maybe your enlisted people you're working with, and the people, our allies, like our allied nations. The things you research will help you understand them better as well. I think it gives you something else to focus on. Like, I think in cadet life, you kind of get hyper-focused on the military training, your academics, your physical demands. But I think doing CSRP, researching something you're generally interested in, it kind of helps you kind of funnel, I guess, everything you learned as a cadet into real-world experiences. So you get to kind of like broaden your mind and do things you're actually interested in instead of just what you have to do in class, which I think is a benefit for any cadet. The project that's so much bigger than yourself, sometimes you think, well, I'm doing all this, but really, will it really have any effect on anything? Like, will my research actually help anyone? But it actually does. So it was funny seeing how like people all around the world, because we had like conferences with people in Brazil, people in Africa, people in Europe, who were all like focusing on the same issues. And our research helped them too, even though it was a completely different region. So it's cool to see how like, even though you think it probably won't really matter in the grand scheme of things, but it did. So that was really awesome just to see how like everything was interconnected. And we all relied on each other for knowledge and assistance and guidance.
The reason I feel that the cadet research as a whole is important is there's a level of experience and a level of understanding that you get from putting your hands on a research topic, then applying it, even if it's just in the back of your head, as you are doing an Air Force mission 5, 10, 15 years down the road. For example, we do a lot of work in the department with the A-10 System Program Office at Hill Air Force Base. And some of our cadets might get the opportunity to fly those aircraft. Some of those cadets might get the opportunity to be buying those aircraft. And having some hands-on experience with that aircraft, especially in a scientific experiment, helps them understand that aircraft much better. I did cadet summer research when I was a cadet. I went out to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, worked in AFRL there, then came back, applied that work to my own cadet research, followed on to Air Force Institute of Technology, where I did my master's research in that same lab. I did my CSRP, and then I ran that lab as my job after my time in AFIT. So sometimes it's very linear. Sometimes my own experience is that my CSRP continued until even now. I bring in research to work with cadets on a similar project that I did 6 years ago. However, others, like I said, will do one project for 5 weeks. Maybe they'll get a chance to write a paper, do a presentation, and then they go on to the next big thing. And maybe they go out, fly planes that don't really think much about the lab anymore, but they still got that lab experience, which I think is important. Many of the cadets that we send to Cadet Summer Research go straight to grad school. So if they're not working the same project they were or a similar project, they at least know how to do research, and that sets them up very well for doing grad school in the Air Force. In the Air Force, you have 1.5 years to do a master's degree. Knowing how to do research from the outset definitely sets you up for success when it comes to completing the master's degrees on time and usually with honors.
This summer, my partner and I had the pleasure of working for NASA. Specifically, we were working with the branch down in Houston. And what we took a look at was the Orion spacecraft, which is NASA's flagship program that they'll be using to send astronauts back to the moon and beyond, specifically looking at the crew module on the Orion spacecraft.
So we took a look at just the crew module part of it, which is where the astronauts sit. And during some flight testing that they had, they noticed that the crew module started tumbling, which is known as dynamic instability. Basically, any small perturbation will cause the crew module to oscillate and then start to tumble, which is not good for the safety of the astronauts. So using computational fluid dynamics, my partner and I took a look at the flow features around the crew module. Eventually, we found that there was some pitching moment hysteresis going on with the separation and reattachment over the aft surface of the crew module that we found was a major contributor to the dynamic instability. This allowed us also to continue our research this semester into sort of the same types of things.
Well, one definite benefit of these CSERP opportunities is the continued research afterwards. So at the end of the summer, my partner and I were able to do a video call with NASA and present our results to them, even in this COVID environment. And after presenting our results and having a conversation with them and seeing where they wanted to go in the future, we were able to arrange 2 more research projects for this upcoming semester and the semester afterwards, continuing on with another computational study as well as some wind tunnel experimentation. So these CSERP opportunities really provide a lot of chances for cadets, not only in the summer, but once we get back to the Hill and back to the school day.
The CSERP program is really great for the Academy, I think, because it gives cadets an opportunity to kind of leave what oftentimes feels like a bubble that we have here up on the Hill and sort of go out into either other academia or industry and just work on a project with people on some real life problems. So it's a really good resource and a good experience for a lot of rising firsties.
My research that I did over the summer with Air Force Research Lab was involving hyperdimensional computing as applied to machine learning. So we could use small robots like drones, and we could train them to learn off of each other and on the fly when they're in the field doing a mission. I wanted to work with AFRL and get experience from that between the civilian and military sides of the research and development field, and I also was just interested in the topic itself. I learned a lot academically, how to write better research papers, how to conduct research professionally. I learned how to communicate with others in the lab. So I would have to talk to my boss, we would have to communicate what we're developing, and that also aided my professional development. Anybody on the ground or in the field can attest that drones and intelligence is a great asset and a huge technology that could yield a big advantage on the battlefield. So I think the warfighter will also see a lot more of these drones. You can have a C-130 drop 100 tiny drones, and they could all work together and learn off of each other and do all these things that can help the mission. This is something I really had an interest in while I didn't over the summer. While I was home because of COVID-19, I would find myself spending my free time, working on my research, running simulations, writing up the reports. And it's very rewarding knowing that this work is going to be published soon and that I am making an impact in the overall world of academia. Being involved in CSRP really helped narrow down what I want to do. I know that I want to major in electrical engineering now because of it, to work more on what I did with CSRP. And I also know that I want to go into a field involving that kind of research and development. So maybe that involves test pilot school, maybe that involves being a developmental engineer. It really opened up a whole new world of the Air Force that I didn't know existed before.
This past summer, I participated in research with my faculty mentor, Colonel William Atkins, and the goal of our research was to fill these gaps we were seeing in previous literature about state ballot measures. And these gaps were around how the political ideology of a ballot measure put in front of the voters in a direct democracy setting impacts the way the voters interact with those ballot measures and whether they support them or not. And so we created a novel data set, we ran it through statistical analyses techniques, and we ultimately had two major findings that were actually very significant because they are contrary to what previous literature says about these topics. And without getting too much into the weeds here, our data that we found was more statistically reliable because it was based on a broader scope of data over more time and across all 50 states. And so based on our findings, now further research can be better used to kind of dive deeper into what these findings mean and how that might be changing the scope of how political scientists view ballot measures and political ideology in relation. When specifically looking at something like political ideology in relation to direct democracy, polarization is certainly a factor, and that's polarization in terms of how a member of one party views a member of the other party and how the policies actually interact. And so you see kind of both of these frontiers introduced when looking at direct democracy and ballot measures. So it's been very fascinating, kind of especially with everything going on and the state that our democracy is in right now. In terms of how CSERP impacts cadet life, we see that cadets as individuals are being encouraged to really dive deep into their interests that they might not be able to kind of explore as much in the class, especially with the demand of academics here. As future officers, we take a kind of a broad approach to education, which I think is very important to what we're going to be doing in the future. But CSERP really provides the opportunity to explore exactly what you're interested in and to explore it at a very high level of critical thinking, problem solving, and just using what you're seeing in front of you, asking questions about it, and then proposing methods to how to answer those questions.
This summer, I got the chance to work with a project called Agility Prime, which is a novel program that the Air Force has created, and they're working with Uber Air to try and create a domestic demand for urban air mobility. So the idea here is instead of putting in and funneling a bunch of money into a couple contracts like Lockheed or Boeing, is to instead create a sort of air race to this new sort of technology with electric propulsion that allows us to have basically the Jetsons car and flying aircraft that we can take from city to city, within a 60-mile range, and to kind of expand flight into this new sector. And so this summer, what I specifically worked on that program was to model and define what these electric propulsive aircraft can do. They call them ORBs, or eVTOL, Electric Vertical Takeoff and Landing Systems. So think about an Osprey, but on a much smaller scale. And I also focused at different alternative fuel sources like hydrogen-powered aircraft. And what would that look like 20, 30 years down the road? And what can the DoD access off these systems once they become mainstream? Was very fortunate about whether it be the Aero Department or the Academy, but because of COVID, I couldn't do my original plan, which was to go to Ukraine for CSLIP, which was Cadet Summer Language Immersion Program. And so at the Aero Department, I said, I still want to do something this summer, even though I'm stuck at home in Minnesota. And they kind of said, well, we got a bunch of research opportunities. And they gave me a list. And then the one that kind of caught my eye, because I was kind of talking to my professors, I really think, Ospreys and VTOL are cool and the future of flight. And they said, well, this program we may be able to get you in on. And so then I started talking to the program managers. They kind of funneled me down into an area where I could do modeling. So even though I was away from Agility Prime, my online research opportunity, the slide deck that I've created and the presentation I've been able to give has been able to reach people at NASA, Army, Navy, Air Force, Border Patrol. And I'm just very humbled that, over my 6-week experience in the summer, that I've been able to create something that's been of use and is eventually going to lead to hopefully some change and some analysis decisions on what the Air Force is going to do in the future. I took what I learned this summer from the different books I was able to get access to and the different mentors I was able to talk to about designing the systems, as I'm actually working with a 3-dig or sophomore friend of mine on a eVTOL drone. And so we're building one right now here at the Academy, and we're doing wind tunnel tests to see if it's stable and it can fly. Otherwise, I'll have to go back to the drawing board. And so the current game plan with that is to do the vertical flight portion by the end of this semester, and then the next semester, the horizontal flight. And then we'll work on the transition section and write up a paper and compete against the AIAA, which is the American Institute for Aeronautics and Aerospace student paper conference in the spring. So that was cool that it directly translated, and it's kind of my research opportunity is now what I want to do for my future career and kind of where I'm focusing my engineering, because for me it opened up so many doors, and this is the type of flight I'm interested in.
So we used to think about research as being extracurricular, something cadets did outside of the formal education, academics, and officer development. Those days are gone, and research is a critical component of their both academics and also of their officer development. They learn critical skills about leading in a technological air and space force through their research, and Cadet Summer Research Program is a critical component of that. So while we have a robust research program at the Air Force Academy, we also rely on our external partners, academia, industry, government contractors, government partners, to help develop these cadets and to help develop their research projects. And so they go out during the summer and they provide research with these external partners. And the best case scenario for us is when those research projects they work on over the summer then come back to the Air Force Academy laboratories, and they continue working on this collaborative effort with our Air Force Academy faculty and our external partners. So we were already getting ready to embark on the largest cadet summer research program in the history of the Air Force Academy, more than 300 cadets. That was before the COVID-19 pandemic. After the pandemic, understandably, many of our external partners had to pull out of those in-person opportunities. But then that developed into a new experience where we developed more than 450 online and virtual research opportunities, the largest that the Academy's ever seen. And from that, we learned a lot about how to do virtual research, how to contribute to the cadets' officer development through research virtually, remotely. And it's been so incredibly successful that we're probably going to continue some part of that virtual remote learning and research opportunity well after COVID and well after the pandemic. A critical part of officer development here at the Air Force Academy is teaching and training cadets how to solve complex, ill-defined problems that they'll face when they're leading our future air and space forces. That's the same type of problem solving that we're teaching them in these research projects. When they embark on a research project that doesn't have a defined solution, or they have to come to that complex solution, solve that complex problem, that's exactly the skills we want them to demonstrate as an officer. And so our research program directly contributes to their officer development and their success as an officer when they graduate from the Air Force Academy.
Experience STEM and the planetarium.
At the United States Air Force Academy, we are dedicated to excellence in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Because we know the battles of the future will be won by out-innovating our adversaries. The history of our force is one of tinkerers and technical problem solvers. And in our STEM program, we continue that proud tradition through building skills that will have a long-lasting impact well beyond our time in the classroom. We develop solutions to real-world problems, work to enhance our national defense, and explore the cutting edge of warfighting domains. These are just a few of the reasons we are consistently ranked among the top colleges and engineering programs in the United States. Because through our STEM programs, we do more than expand our own knowledge. We shape the future of modern warfare.
Since the planetarium closed 15 years ago, technology has changed dramatically for planetariums around the world. Here at USAFA, the old planetarium used to be in the round with a projector that came up the middle to project the images out. These days, as you can see, the planetarium seats all face in one direction, which is great for us because it enables us to use this space for other things. In addition to showing the planetarium shows, we can also use this as a conference facility.
The planetarium has a great influence on my selection of coming here to the Air Force Academy. In 1961, when it was first opening, I was a Boy Scout camping out for a week here, and I went went to the planetarium nearly every day to see the shows. I was so enthralled in my spare time. Then it influenced me to select and come to the Academy as a cadet in 1966, and it was the first club that I volunteered for, and I still remember the long lines waiting to get into the planetarium.
My father was critical in my development. When I was quite young, I really wanted a telescope, not a toy telescope, but the real thing. I had my eyes set on a 6-inch reflector, which the family couldn't afford. So my father checked books out of the library, sent off for the parts from a mail-order scientific firm, and when they came, slowly over periods of weeks, ground out a reflector mirror at night using a candle for calibration, and ultimately built a very workable telescope. And through all of that work, through all that love, through all that commitment, through all that sacrifice, I got motivated. That motivation led to my applying to the Air Force Academy, coming here, and now I very much want to honor my father.
The best part about the cadet involvement that's going to come with the new planetarium is that we're still learning how we can actually use it. Because of the state-of-the-art technology and the types of systems and projectors we have in here, and just with the dome setup, you have such a wide array of applications that you can use it for that we're still learning. You can have teachers give lessons, you can have the public come and watch shows. We already have both of those, and it's only expanding.
But one of the things that really means a lot to me is when I'm in here and I see the faces of the people, the children in particular, their faces light up when they see the shows. They come over to me at the end of a show and thank me profusely because they've had such a wonderful time here. And what happens is I get these wonderful anecdotes from people, either people visiting, people email me, people phone me and say, I remember going to the planetarium when I was a kid, and now I want to bring my kids to the planetarium.
It's a great teaching device. It's a great motivational device. When you look up into the skies at night, it's hard not to be struck with awe and be motivated. The planetarium has the opportunity to bring that to cadets and to young people in the community. Young people who might never have thought what they could do will realize the potential they have to contribute to society.
The planetarium is coming to life. It's being rebirthed, so to speak, with the same structure, but all new technology and the ability to just have eye-popping shows.
Thank you so much for making this planetarium possible for the community here at the United States Air Force Academy, for the local community, and for the people who come in from all over the world.
Thank you for making the planetarium renovations possible. What you've done, the money you've donated, it's allowed myself and many others to explore and grow our fascination of what we've loved since we were kids.
My name is Lisa Niener, and I am your new Strategic Communications Directorate, Chief of the Visitor Experience and STEM Outreach, and I am fortunate to be back with the team. I have 22 years as an Air Force pilot turned strategic communicator, and had the pleasure of working with the team from 2015 to 2017 while I was assigned to their office as a uniform wearer, and in the very beginning stages, for example, of the planetarium remodel. And I'm back with the team as a civilian in a new position, and I'm so excited to be back in this capacity and working with an outstanding group. My biggest message is the thank you to the donors and helping us start seeing this reality of an improved visitor experience and seeing the planetarium, like I said, from 2015 to how it is now, and knowing that up until the unfortunate closure, the pause that we've got right now, the throughput of visitors and the enjoyment of the movies and the experience, the facility is beautiful, and we could not have done it without the generous donations from the donors, and we're grateful and we're excited to see where we can take it from here. When I started with the CM team in 2015, I was actually there on loan as a reservist and showed up on the team, and lo and behold was this planetarium that had been shut down for several years, and to see where it is now compared to what I saw 5 years ago, coming back as a civilian team member, it is exceptionally impressive, seeing it go from collecting dust and being dilapidated to this big, beautiful, modern facility is extraordinary, and I'm so excited to be able to share it with the public again soon. So expectations for the near future are that I'm hoping to be able to open the planetarium for cadet use for their academics. Certainly the mission of the Air Force Academy is the cadets and getting them through their studies and commissioning. So hopefully we'll be able to safely open it to allow for some of the instructors specific courses to utilize the facility. As far as the public is concerned, we don't have an opening date as of yet. Similar to other movie theaters and events of the sort, there is not a great plan. I am communicating with the community and kind of sharing best practices and thoughts on how we can safely open. When we do open, we have a new show in Saturn's Rings that wasn't able to be shown upon purchase in March. So we'll be excited to be able to share that with the public, as well as the plans for a laser program, a laser light show that we will hopefully be able to install in the upcoming months as well. So that will be exciting once we can open back up for the public.